What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of State of the Steelers. And today we're going to be talking about the new coaching staff of the Pittsburgh Steelers and how this shapes the Steelers going forward in 2024, what we can expect, and what these new coaches mean for the current staff and for the players themselves. But before we get into that, let's talk about the NFL awards the other night. I first want to start off by saying congratulations to Cam Hayward. He took home the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. He's been nominated, I want to say, the last 3 years consecutively. This was his sixth year being nominated for the award. For those that don't know what the award is, it's the final award at the NFL honors. It's recognized as the league's highest honor, acknowledging players for their outstanding community service off the field, as well as their outstanding play on the field. This award goes all the way back to 1970, when legendary quarterback Johnny Unitas became the league's first man of the year. In 1999, it was renamed after the late and great Walter Payton. In Hayward's speech, he talked about, his dad being number 34 and Payton being number 34 and what that meant for him. And, he lost his father at a young age and having to, help raise his brother, who's also on the team. He wanted to give back to the youth of Pittsburgh, and he created the House of Hayward Foundation, which does just that, gives back to the youth. And he ended up winning, I think, around $250,000. And he's already talked about, he's been thinking about different ways of putting that money back to the community. So congratulations to Cam Hayward. It was well-deserved, in my opinion. We applaud you, Cam. Thank you for everything that you do. And then there was another award that was given to another Pittsburgh Steeler. It was Naji Harris. He ended up getting the Angry Run of the Year. Naji's a guy that he kind of doesn't really care for the award, to be honest with you. When it was like a weekly thing, Kyle Brandt went up there kind of doing his spew of yelling and screaming and things of that nature. And you can just kind of see that Naji wasn't very comfortable with it. He seemed like that wasn't the attention he wanted to be brought onto him, right? But Cam, he was behind him. He shook Kyle Brandt's hand. He was ready to go. He was getting hyped. So even though Naj doesn't typically acknowledge the award, I want to say congratulations to you, Naji Harris. You are one of the angrier runners in the NFL when you want to be. And you have one mean stiff arm. It's dangerous. Keep doing what you're doing. I think that when it comes to Naj, I know that his fifth-year option is going to be coming up, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have a decision to make, whether or not they're going to sign Naji Harris's fifth-year option. And I know that a lot of people going into this last year, or even throughout this year, up until the later part of the season, were saying that Naji Harris probably isn't going to get that fifth-year option. However, the way the Pittsburgh Steelers have been playing as of, the last few games, with the emergence of Mason Rudolph and a deep ball threat, it kind of lightened up the box there for Naji and Jalen Warren, and he took advantage of it. The Pittsburgh Steelers ran very well in the last few games, and I'm excited to see what happens in 2024. If what Mike Tomlin and Art Rooney said is true, that they're going to bring in some competition to go up against Kenny Pickett, regardless of who wins that competition, whether it be Kenny or whoever they bring in. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers really, really want Mason Rudolph back. And, the owner's kind of been talking about it. He's brought him up multiple times. I think that may end up being what happens. And if the competition ends up being Mason Rudolph versus Kenny Pickett, I don't think we're going to see a regression in Mason Rudolph. He's going into his seventh year, although he only has just a little bit over a dozen games starting, even though he just has a little bit over a dozen starts under his belt. I think he's right around where he is. And what we saw out of him in the last few games is probably a reflection of what we can expect to see. A person who can throw 1.5 touchdowns per game, 0.3 interceptions per game. So every 3 games, he's going to probably throw a pick, but he'll give you somewhere around 20 to 24 touchdowns. In my opinion, if he had the entire season and it was consistent what we saw. Now, if Kenny Pickett goes into that battle and he can surpass that, he can show that he can be that special quarterback that we saw last year in preseason, then the result is the same. A good quarterback playing as a good quarterback should. Thus, we should expect some similar results as what we saw in the later part of the season last year. And it doesn't matter who wins, whether it's Kenny or Mason. If they can push the ball down the field, I expect a huge year from the Steelers running backs. And like I said, there's the decision for the tag. I think they do it. Main reason is, I think right now it's like $6 million for the option. And that's if you don't want to extend them, right? You can always extend them, kind of go up to them and say, hey, look, we have you for this amount, on the option. We can franchise tag you after that. You're taking a gamble that you're not going to get hurt this year and that you're going to be healthy and that you're going to play in the manner that you've been playing this entire year to get that franchise tag. Or we can sign a deal and it's going to guarantee the money you would have already made anyways, whether it was the franchise and the option. but it's guaranteed, or at least partial of it is guaranteed outside of the first year. I think that's an option that they can go in and look at. And I think that that may be something that Naji Harris considers, especially given the fact that he has a lot of touches and he wasn't the youngest running back coming in out of college. He's been relatively healthy. So the likelihood of the chances of an injury coming, I guess you can say mathematically, is probably a little elevated. But at the end of the day, he's not a speed back. He's not going to get that home run, for you, even though he had a crap ton of 15-yard plus runs. He's not known for that. He's known for being a bruiser, or at least everybody thinks, including myself, that that's probably where he should be or what he should be doing. This shake and bake and trying to run around people, I just don't think it's there for him. But if he can just put his head down and run forward and run straight, I think he's a fantastic running back. 100%. But he gets the Angry Runs Award. It's justified. I look forward to seeing what Naji Harris and Jalen Warren do as a tandem this upcoming year, especially under Arthur Smith. He was a guy that likes to run the ball from all appearances. I mean, there's also the question of the quarterback that he's had. Ryan Tannehill had a Pro Bowl year, I think like 30 touchdowns, things like that. But in Atlanta, it didn't go so well. And I think a lot of it had to do with the quarterback position, the quarterback play not being there. It sounds very similar to the Steelers situation where they got some players, they got some very talented skill position players, but the quarterback play just wasn't there for the majority of last season. And there was one other award that was given to a Pittsburgh Steeler, and that was TJ Watt. He ended up getting the Deacon Jones Award. Basically what that is for the player who's had the most sacks throughout the season. He had 19, more than Myles Garrett. I think he ended up with like 14. But the biggest topic, so to speak, is he got snubbed. He was up for Defensive Player of the Year. They ended up giving it to Myles. I'm not going to go down the stats. Everybody knows him. TJ Watt beats Myles Garrett in every stat there is that is actually recordable. The only stat that Myles Garrett supposedly beats TJ Watt in is how many times he's double or triple teamed, something to that nature. That's part of football. TJ Watt can't control, if they double team him or not. TJ Watt can't control what the offense is doing. If the opposing offenses, which TJ Watt has had a lot of sacks against the Cleveland Browns, if you're going to play him a certain way, then you deserve to get sacked that many times. If the Cleveland Browns have a Myles Garrett and they see that Myles Garrett is getting double, triple teamed and it's working, it's effective. He only had 1 sack in the last 7 games. Then why aren't they utilizing the same technique against TJ Watt? Probably because it don't matter. You can double team him, you can triple team him. He's going to get there. It won't work. And so all you're doing is allowing somebody else to get there as well. So you tell your quarterback you have X amount of time, get rid of the ball. Because the Steelers have got some studs across the defensive line. On the other side, as the outside linebacker, Alex Highsmith, he's had his flashes. Nick Herbig is a guy that comes up behind him who's also had some flashes in limited play. You got Cam Hayward in the middle. When he's healthy, he's a beast. Larry Ogunjobi probably can say the same thing. We just haven't seen him healthy with, in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. And Keanu Benton is a guy that I think is going to be a force on the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line. He reminds me of a Stephon Tuitt, kind of tall, big guy, relentless, in the middle, just kind of throws people around, very strong. I'm looking forward to what he can do in year 2. Get that jump. There's this, opinion-based win rate thing that PFF does, and or, if there was a play to be made, he would have made it here. Well, I don't know if PFF understands that sometimes there's weaknesses on the offense because the play is going somewhere else. How they'll sometimes leave an edge guy on one side unblocked because they're doing a pitch to the other side. Are those the situations where Myles Garrett could possibly have one on those plays? I don't know. I think it's an opinion-based type of thing. But how do you think that Myles Garrett feels, knowing that he lost in every real statistic to TJ Watt? This is basically the NFL version of a participation award. Everybody knew that Myles Garrett was going to get this award way before. It's been talked about. PFF gave him their Defensive Player of the Year awards, even though he had 1 sack in the last 7 games of the NFL season and really didn't do anything. When he's played against the Steelers, this last year, he had 1 game where he was kind of causing a little bit of havoc there. But for the most part, Dan Moore has handled Myles Garrett one-on-one. Now, those are some stats you can see, and that's probably one of the reasons why when the debate comes up between Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, who's the better outside linebacker, defensive end, pass rusher. As a Steelers fan, the majority of the time that we see the Browns is when they're playing the Steelers. And Myles Garrett hasn't done very much. And TJ Watt in those games, I think those are probably some of his favorite games to play is against the Browns. He's had huge numbers against the Browns. So just from the, the eye test, it doesn't seem anywhere near close. But it is what it is. TJ Watt didn't get it. He ended up going to Twitter afterwards saying something to the effect that, it's not something I'm not used to. But yeah, this is basically a participation award given to Myles Garrett. All he had to do was finish the season and play in majority of the games and stay relatively healthy, and he was going to get this award. There was no ands, ifs, or buts about it. They didn't want to give it to TJ Watt. The only way they would have given it to TJ Watt is if he would have gotten into the 20s again as far as sacks go, or would have broken the sack record, his own sack record, and taken it, himself. But to TJ Watt's credit, yeah, this isn't the only time that he's been snubbed. This should probably be his third, if not fourth time being, defensive player of the year. And the fact that it's only happened once because, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of Watt fatigue, given that his brother, had won the award several times as well. I don't know. I just don't think that it's going to hold, that value anymore like it used to. Once you start giving, awards like this just for participating, it's gonna end up turning into the Pro Bowl. Just kind of like how, there are some players who get in just because of their name. That's it. Minka Fitzpatrick was one of them this year. He didn't play very much. And when he did play, he had no splash this year. He was injured the entire time. It's not to his fault. Yet he made a Pro Bowl. This is where the NFL honors is going. If you're not going to give the guy that is actually productive on the field, then what are you doing? This isn't a game of horseshoes where it's almost, you know what I'm saying? I don't get it. I don't get it. And I don't understand why the Browns. I mean, what have they done? They finally made a playoff game. They've won one playoff game in I don't know how many years. And yeah, I get it. The same thing can be said for the Steelers. They haven't won any playoff games as of recent, but the Steelers have some hardware. The Steelers have done something, whether it's been a while or not. Browns don't. So maybe this is some kind of sympathy thing because they haven't won anything. They've been the paper champs, consecutively for the last, I don't know, 5 years or so. They're the preseason champions. Everybody thinks, oh, this is the year the Browns are going to do something. And every year they've just fallen flat on their face. I think it's bull crap, y'all. But with that being said, let's start looking at 2024 and let's look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and how maybe perhaps, we can see how they're coming together. There's been a little bit of a glimpse there. The Steelers have gotten their coaching staff together for the most part. And there's been an announcement of 3 coaches that have joined the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we'll go through them one by one. The first one that we're going to talk about is wide receivers coach Zach Azzanni, who was formerly of the New York Jets. He coached there for one season. Prior to that, he was the wide receivers coach for the Denver Broncos between 2018 and 22 with the Chicago Bears back in 2017. I'm a little bit kind of like so-and-so in this. He's had 6 seasons with wide receivers, and he's only seen 2 receivers hit over 1,000 yards, and that was Cortland Sutton in 21 and Garrett Wilson last year. But for the most part, majority of the receivers just haven't been successful under him. We'll see how he does here with the Pittsburgh Steelers receivers. They've got some guys that need some leadership. They need some direction. One in George Pickens especially. I think Deontay Johnson probably is on that list. You don't punch your quarterback in the face at halftime and not have some sort of disciplinary issue, right? Or diva-ness to you. And that was all allegedly. I don't know if it's true or not. I digress. But he'll be coming over. He'll be the new wide receivers coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know a lot of fans were harping for Hines Ward and or some kind of bigger splash name. We'll see how this goes. Like I said, I'm a little bit kind of iffy on this. I mean, he did well last season with Garrett Wilson. He did that with their quarterback issue that they have. So maybe perhaps if the Steelers can, address that quarterback play and get it going, and with the receivers that the Pittsburgh Steelers have, he can get going himself as well. We'll see how it works for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the wide receivers. It's an interesting move, needless to say. And the next coach that the Pittsburgh Steelers brought on is Mateo Kambui. He was a guy that played center for Florida A&M. He's a guy that spent last season, 2023, with the Atlanta Falcons as the assistant line coach. He's being brought in as an offensive assistant, but this kind of goes into the points that I've been making when it comes to getting a new offensive coordinator. How is the offensive coordinator going to jive with the current positional coaches if the Pittsburgh Steelers decide to keep them around? In this situation here, when you have, Arthur Smith and he's bringing in his former offensive line assistant, he's a guy that likes to run the ball. Arthur Smith, that is. They like to play bully ball. He's had teams that have done that in the past. A big component of that is the offensive line, the structure, the style in which they want to block. The Steelers currently have Pat Meyer as the offensive line coach. I don't know how he mixes with an Arthur Smith offense, but I questioned it. If the Steelers are going to go out there and get, a new offensive coordinator, somebody who's not currently on the Steelers, maybe you need to buy into this person and not just buy into who they are, but really buy in and allow them to put their fingerprints on everything when it comes to the offense. The Pittsburgh Steelers offense has just been trash for the last couple of years. It's been bad. Statistically, the eye test, whatever you want to call it, it's just been all bad. And there needs to be a change. And I would have thought that you would give your offensive coordinator those reins. Get your offensive line coach, get your quarterback coach, get your passing game coordinator that you may or may not want, and build your offensive playbook, put your mind into it. I'm just wondering how much on the same page these guys are going to be, especially if they come back from different philosophies. It's one thing, the players have to learn a playbook and things like that. And I get it, but putting guys that have never worked with each other and, or maybe have a different style, I'm not sure if that's a successful formula. I mean, it's more than just, the offensive line and a coach and the this new offensive assistant. You're also looking at the quarterback coach. The Pittsburgh Steelers go out there and acquire Tom Arth as the quarterback's coach. He was the quarterback's coach for the Chargers, and he helped Justin Herbert have his career that he's had thus far. This is another hire I'm not really too sure about, to be honest, but it has more to do with, not knowing much about this guy, to be honest with you. I know that he played quarterback for some time, so I think that helps out the position, having somebody that's been a quarterback. He was a backup to Peyton Manning, so he got to see day in, day out a Hall of Fame quarterback go to work, do his business, and what it takes for that player or for Peyton Manning to be as successful as he was. Obviously, there was some things that you couldn't coach when it comes to Peyton Manning because, if everybody could coach what Peyton Manning had or some of these great, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, then there wouldn't be anything special about quarterbacks, right? So I think it's, in all reality, I do think it has a lot to do with a perfect pairing when it comes to the quarterback and the coaches. You want to have the right scheme for the right player. This is a guy that I don't know much about. Like I said, I know that he coached the last couple of years, helping out Justin Herbert there in Los Angeles. However, himself and the head coach there got relief of duties this past offseason, and he's available. Coach Arth for the Chargers, like I said, he did some okay things. I mean, the Chargers ranked third in passing in 2022, ninth in total offense back then. This was one of Herbert's breakout years. But then last year happens, and I think a lot had to do with Herbert being limited. He was injured. He played a couple of games injured. He only played 13, so he missed a few games. The Chargers end up finishing 20th in points scored and 13th in pass yards per game. So they did kind of have a recession. And I'll tell you why that's a little bit concerning to me. Just kind of like the players, right? When you have a quarterback that's gone out there and he's doing his thing on the field and he's playing well, we want to see that a couple of times, and the reason why is because of film. Once your tendencies, your likes, your dislikes are out there, NFL defenses are going to plan for those things. And that's the same thing for the offensive coordinator. Once, an identity is set and you can see what an offense likes, don't like, and if there's some sort of pattern or giveaway or whatnot, then, defenses are going to pick up on that. I would have liked to have seen, maybe perhaps the other way around, where it was okay and then it got better. I really don't like to see regressions. It's concerning to me. It just really is. But then it kind of boils down to, again, the Pittsburgh Steelers have Mike Sullivan. There are rumors out there and they're supposedly keeping him. I don't think the Steelers have made anything official or statement official saying that they're going to be keeping Mike Sullivan. But you got Mike Sullivan, Eddie Faulkner, and Pat Meyer, probably all three being retained. So that's quarterback, running back, offensive line. Outside of the receivers and tight ends, that's a big chunk of your offense that you're retaining from an offense that struggled last year, an offense that, the Steelers fired their offensive coordinator for, halfway throughout the year. So I'm a little bit confused as to why they're still acquiring or keeping so many guys, unless there's some sort of comfortability or something with Sullivan and maybe perhaps one of the quarterbacks. I know that the main conversation that's been going on right now has been with the quarterback position. It's been, the Steelers are going to be bringing in Kenny Pickett. Arthur Smith talked about Kenny Pickett, coach, owner. They've all talked about Kenny. I know that they all brought up, Mason as well, but Kenny is the guy that is on the team right now. And he's been basically the number one guy, right? They've been talking about him as being the number one guy and what they need to do to help him in his development. And, what I say to that is, what else do you expect him to do? What else do you expect him to say? For me, when it comes to watching and following the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's always kind of turned into watch what they do, not what they say. And when you go back to last season, what did the Pittsburgh Steelers do? They started Mason Rudolph over a healthy Kenny Pickett. Some people will say, it's because he's in his second year and, he needed time to get back in the in the feel of things, this, that, and the third. I don't think that's the case. Not at all. They may be saying things to not hurt his feelings, but I don't think that was the case. And if they're starting Mason Rudolph over a healthy Kenny Pickett, that means that Mason Rudolph took that job from Kenny Pickett last year. One of the things that Art Rooney said a lot in every press conference that he's gone into or every interview that he's been a part of is basically that they need better quarterback play and that they saw what this offense can do with better quarterback play, referencing Mason Rudolph. Now, obviously, Mason Rudolph has a decision to make. Him coming back isn't just on the Pittsburgh Steelers and with, if they're going to offer him a deal. He also has to, like it and or maybe perhaps see if there's anybody else out there willing to, that is liking him more than the Steelers to pay him a little bit more. And the other thing is, too, he may want some money, not so much that's going to knock him out of, contention for the Pittsburgh Steelers to not want him back or to not sign him if they think that he's truly a possibility of being, that guy, at least for now. I think he's going to want some money that's going to show that the Steelers have that confidence in him. He's already shown he has the confidence in himself. He's gone out there. He's done what he's done. Now it's time for the Steelers to show how much confident they are in him. And if they don't show that, I think, for sure, he's going to be gone. If they want to say, hey, you got to earn this, that, and a third, then maybe perhaps he does find something that is going to pay him like he has a real chance of being the starter. Because, he's gone down this block before, where he's being told he's going to have an opportunity to compete. And the last time he was told that, it ended up being a farce. There was no competition there. That job was Mitch Trubisky's. You can ask anybody that went out to training camp, myself included, and I'm not a scout. I don't know if I'm looking at the right thing or not. But from what I could tell, it looked better for Mason Rudolph than Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. I mean, it kind of translated into real stadiums. And that's the thing, right? You have Mason Rudolph. He did what he did in a real stadium. If he ends up coming back, what is it that Kenny Pickett can do in shorts and shirts, in OTAs, training camp, preseason? We all saw what preseason was last year. How much can you trust that versus what you saw in Mason Rudolph in real stadiums, in real games, and games that counted, and games where the defense was planning for you, where there was blitzes and misdirection, and the defense is trying to hide what they're doing. So what is it that Kenny Pickett can do in those settings that would surpass what Mason did in the last few games? And you really sit there and think about it. I mean, one, they started Mason over a healthy Kenny Pickett. And the next thing is, what can he do from here to there that can show the Pittsburgh Steelers that they will be confident in having him as QB1 come week 1 of the regular season? I don't know if there's something there. And, I know that, Coach T was asked about Deontay Johnson's statements about wanting him as, QB1 and being QB1 next season, and saying that if there's some sort of, those type of words, if there's going to be a divide in the locker room and whatnot, Coach T already said he don't care. He wants the competition. If somebody's going to fold because somebody else wants someone else, then he doesn't belong in the NFL. Doesn't belong as QB1, that's for sure. I mean, there's some questions that are here, right, about Kenny Pickett and not being on the field. The first one came up and about was he didn't dress while he was healthy that one game. And I don't know any situation. And if I'm wrong, please send me that situation on my Twitter. My handle is @StateOfSteelers. But send me a situation where a player was told that they were healthy, but only healthy enough to play if they were the starter, that they were not healthy enough to back up. I've never heard that before. I've heard it the other way around. You're healthy enough to go, but we're going to put you as the backup just because you haven't practiced or played or any of those things. We're going to suit you up just for that. And if somebody goes down, then you'll go in. Remember back in the day when Ben Roethlisberger went down, and the next game, I think it was like a foot injury, Landry Jones goes in there and his foot gets stepped on, and then Ben comes in like first drive. Now, I know that Kenny Pickett's injury was a little bit more severe than that, but I think that it was probably more than just the play. It was probably also the environment. The last few games they were in cold weather. They were in the elements. One was on the West Coast, where the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't won since the 80s. I just don't see, if you bring back a Mason Rudolph and you sit down and you talk, like if I were Mason Rudolph and I sat there and I talked to Coach T and I looked at Art Rooney and I said, I did those things in real stadiums, not in preseason, not in OTAs or shorts and shirts, in regular season games and in the postgame. I thought he had a really good postgame performance. I know he had the one interception in the end zone, and everybody looks at that and says, hey, it was a bad throw, bad idea, bad choice. It really wasn't. If you go back and watch the tape on it, the cornerback is facing away from Mason Rudolph until the ball is almost there. Right before the ball gets there, he turns around and he makes a play. I mean, you're playing NFL players. These guys get paid millions of dollars, to play a game as well. They're going to be good. They're going to know what they're doing. They're going to be able to do some things here and there every now and then. And I think that's what the situation was. And let's just say he puts it out there just a little bit more, or, like I said, 9 out of 10 times that's being caught, and that's a touchdown. The Steelers didn't win. I mean, I'm not going to make any excuses, but I do think that there was some hope there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can watch that and say to yourself that, there could be something there in the future as a team, not just, Mason Rudolph. I'm talking about as a team. I felt that during that 3-game stretch, we saw the receivers doing what they were supposed to do, and there was no argument on the side. I mean, there was a game there where George Pickens didn't get a reception or get a target. Did we hear him upset? Did we hear him, getting mad and shutting down his Instagram and all these other things? No. In fact, a couple of weeks later, after the season is over, Mason Rudolph puts out a picture of himself and the team on Instagram, and George Pickens is in the comment section calling him the GOAT 5 times. I don't know. If you read between the lines, I think that tells you, which quarterback the Pittsburgh Steelers receivers want. Deontay Johnson told you flat out. George Pickens is putting it on his Instagram. Jaylen Warren expects it. Art Rooney wants to work with him. In fact, I think there's been some rumors there that I've heard that they're already talking, which I'm sure they have been. That's probably not anything crazy. I mean, they have all said they want to do business again. So there's going to, part of that is the talking part. But we'll see. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell if you haven't done so. Peace.